Human organs sell for a lot of money. I should know. I almost lost mine. This story happened when I was 21. I had just finished high school and was looking for a job. I lived with my mom, who relied a lot on odd jobs to make ends meet, so I really needed to pull my weight. Luckily, I found a gig working at Target. The pay was lousy, but it was something. I could finally contribute to our upkeep at home. But it wasn't enough. I had always had dreams of making it big and raking in lots of money. I had tried crypto, forex trading, affiliate marketing, and a bunch of other get-rich-quick schemes. But all of it had blown up in my face. All of it required learning the tricks of the trade, and I didn't have the patience for that. That's what led me to the dark web. Don't get me wrong, I wanted money fast, but I wasn't ready to become the next Pablo Escobar. Crime was not something I was willing to get into. So that left me with very few options. Every day after work, I'd boot up my old laptop and open the Tor browser. I was pretty much desensitized to the countless gore sites that would pop up. I had a mission, so I had no time to be distracted by the dark web's macabre offerings. After a week of fruitless searches, I was about ready to give up. Most of what I saw was either illegal or a blatant scam. There was really no way to make easy money on the dark web. Then I found it, the perfect solution. The site was pristine, done in professional-looking blues and whites. Someone had taken a lot of effort with it. But what they were offering was almost ridiculous. It had to be a scam. I knew the right thing to do was to close my computer and forget the whole thing. But I didn't move. What if this was my big break? What if the risk paid off? So instead of following my gut, I decided to do a little research. My findings emboldened me. Human organs really did sell for ridiculous amounts. In fact, on the black market, the $50,000 the site was offering was on the low end. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My mind was racing with excitement. This was it. This is how I would level up. So I went to sleep that night and dreamt of new Jordan kicks, a full fridge, and a washing machine for my mom. I think that was the last time I slept soundly. The last time where my dreams were not plagued by hooded men, slinking in the darkness, brandishing scalpels. The next day after work, I opened the site again and called the contact provided. "Hi, my name is Jimmy. I'm interested in selling a kidney." I stuttered. "Hello, Jimmy. Thank you for getting in touch. My name is Claire." The voice was low and monotonous, like I was speaking to a machine. "I am going to send you an address. Please come there tomorrow at 8 a.m. A doctor will be there to attend to you. The procedure won't take too long, and we will explain anything you might want to know once you arrive." She hung up. A second later, my phone beeped, and a text message popped up with an address. It was actually quite close to my house, literally just an hour away. For some reason, that made me uneasy. For a second, I thought about telling my mom about the whole thing, but ultimately decided against it. She would try to talk me out of it, and I'd probably listen to her. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it alone. It was only one kidney. A body could function well without it. Since my boss and I were cool, I just shot him a text that I wouldn't be in tomorrow. He didn't ask any questions. Just wished me well. Great guy, Mike. With that out of the way, I decided to sleep. My dreams were restless, but I chalked it up to anxiety. 8 a.m. found me standing in front of a dilapidated warehouse, in an area that could only be described as seedy. Like the kind of place you would expect people to come to commit a crime. The morning chill bit into my skin, and I shivered involuntarily. There was no one in sight, but I felt like someone was watching me. I could feel pinpricks at the back of my neck, and hear my heartbeat increase in tempo in my chest. A less desperate man would have turned around and left. But I couldn't do that, so I swallowed my fear and walked into the warehouse. It was full of wooden crates, from the floor to the ceiling, leaving a narrow passage to walk through. I took small, measured steps, my footfalls like gunshots in the dead of silence. The passage was claustrophobic. It felt like a pathway into the abyss, like the kind of place you would construct to keep people from escaping. Suddenly, I didn't want to go through with this anymore. My instincts were screaming at me that I was in danger. Panic hit me like a sledgehammer, and the saliva dried in my mouth. My mind had gone into overdrive, crafting pessimistic narratives that chilled me to the bone. Why pay $50,000 for one kidney when you can get both for free? I had to get out. So quickly I turned on my heels to make leave. That's when I saw him. Standing right by the entrance was a gigantic man in a butcher's apron, holding a gleaming scalpel in his right hand. His face was covered by a black ski mask. Only his eyes were visible, and in them I could see malice and murder. As I took in this massive behemoth, I realized he had a rag in his left hand, and emanating from it was the sweet scent of chloroform. They say when you're faced with death, you will surprise yourself. And that day, I got to live it. A primal scream tore out of my throat, and I charged the giant. I don't think he was expecting me to move, so when I rammed him, he crashed into the crates, his eyes widening. He bellowed something behind me, probably calling for reinforcements, but I didn't want to confirm. I tore out of the warehouse like the devil was on my heels, and I didn't stop until I was in a public place. I don't know if they had chased me partway, or if they had even chased me at all. I never stopped to check. I quickly hailed a taxi and stammered my address to the driver. The taxi ride home felt surreal, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline. When I finally got back, I collapsed into my bed, trying to process what had just happened. I couldn't believe how close I'd come to losing my life for the promise of easy money. From that day onwards, I've never had a good night's sleep. My dreams are always troubled. People always say there's a feeling you get when you're being watched. It's like an electric current on your skin, a sixth sense that tells you you're not alone. I've been feeling it for a week now. As I walk to my apartment under the dim illumination of the streetlights, I feel eyes on me from the shadows. Someone is stalking me, and instinctively, I know they do not wish me well. I've tried to think of a reason why anyone would be out to get me, but my mind keeps drawing blanks. About a week ago, I woke up with a splitting headache and a horrible case of amnesia. I couldn't remember what I'd been doing the week before that. My memory wasn't hazy, it just wasn't there. There was a void where my memories were supposed to be. My doctor says the memory loss was most likely due to some cocktail I ingested because he found traces of scopolamine and benzodiazepines in my blood. I tried to explain to him that I'd never take such drugs for recreational purposes, but he just gave me a pointed look. He had been my doctor for years. It was no surprise that he thought I was self-medicating. We both knew it would be for me to go down that path. That's not the only thing that wasn't in place. Soon I realized that my bank account had decreased drastically. I was missing over $10,000. Initially, I thought the money had been stolen, but my transaction history showed I myself had withdrawn that money. Had I been under duress? Suddenly, a picture started forming in my head. Me drugged to the gills, being forced to withdraw all my money from an ATM by a faceless man? It made a lot of sense, but I couldn't place the Tor browser role in all of this. I found it on my laptop. I was certain I hadn't installed it. I knew people used it to get onto the dark web, so it made me wonder what I might have been looking for on there. If it was me who had actually installed it and not someone else. So I figured my best bet was to take some time off work, report the matter to the police, and see if my money could be recovered. "You play too much, Eric. Go home and rest like you said you were going to do," my boss said, smiling at me. "What do you mean?" I asked, cocking my head. "You came in on Friday and requested 2 weeks off, so I'm surprised to see you here. But if you're here to treat us to dinner again, then by all means stay." Amos grinned. That floored me. I had bought dinner for everyone on Friday? Why would I do that? I hardly talked to most of the people in the office. And another thing? Our leave request system was very complicated. It was something that I always complained to HR about, and they kept saying they would fix it. There is no way I could have logged in the request while drugged. There was something definitely off. On my way back to the office, I started feeling the eyes. The city was abuzz with traffic, brightly lit by the sunlight, and filled with people moving purposefully. But I still felt unsafe. Across the street from me was an unmarked van, just parked there. I kept walking and noticed the van starting to move slowly, paralleling my pace. That's when I panicked. I increased my pace, my heart palpitating. Could it be the guys that robbed me back again for seconds? Suddenly, the van sped off, and I was left staring in its wake, half relieved, half terrified. I needed to know what was happening with my life. I needed to know what had gone down in the week that I couldn't remember. I had to do that before the darkness caught up with me again. A year ago, my wife died, and I hadn't been the same since. I lost all interest in living, and every day is just another repetition of a bleak and empty existence. My doctor says the darkness is depression, and it can be treated, but after losing my Penelope, I wasn't sure I wanted to be treated. But since I woke up last week with my memory loss, the darkness has been at bay. Fear and confusion have consumed my every waking moment, leaving no room for anything else. I was on my way to the police station when it happened. I could feel the eyes on me again, like a drill boring into a soft surface. I was about to cross the road when some instinct told me to look up. There, perched on the edge of a building across from me, was a figure in dark clothing. Extending from him was a sleek barrel of a sniper rifle, and he had it aimed to shoot. I wanted to run, to scream, to tear into the concrete and burrow into the earth, but I was out of time. There was a cracking sound, a splash of red in the corner of my eye, then darkness. My doctor said I was lucky to be alive. The bullet had glanced off my skull instead of penetrating. I just lay there in bed as he talked. I wasn't listening. Someone had tried to kill me. I had been right. They had been watching me. I shivered as I realized that nothing was stopping them from trying again. Lots of people came to see me in the hospital, bringing me flowers, snacks, and cards with sweet messages. My friend Jimmy was even kind enough to get me my laptop, so I wouldn't be bored. I really appreciated the concern. I had never thought people liked me that much. Later in the day, I received one last visitor. I was scrolling through videos on YouTube on my laptop when he walked in. It was a giant man in a form-fitting tuxedo. "The contract is fulfilled per the terms. Assurance of death costs more. And there is also the matter of the police, since this is now hot. "If you want another go, you know where to find us," he said, before leaving promptly. I stared at him in confusion for a while, before it dawned on me. Suddenly, I knew what had been happening, and more importantly, I knew who had been trying to kill me. I didn't think they would be trying again. I stared thoughtfully at my laptop, my eyes glued to the Tor browser icon blinking on my taskbar like a lone star on a dark night. The History tab showed a site for hitmen who specialized in assisting would-be suicides who were afraid of chickening out. Their tagline was, "You won't know it's coming." The cup of coffee lies cold on my desk, forgotten. Outside, the wind whistles through the branches of the massive oak tree growing by my room. Thunder rumbles in the distance. A storm is brewing. I stared at the message on my phone, eyes wide and jaw slacked. Any other day, I would have been overjoyed to receive a message from my Uncle Jimmy. But there is just one small problem. Uncle Jimmy has been dead for over a year now. This all starts with my stupid curiosity. Ever since my uncle died, I always wondered what it would be like to get to talk to him again, to get a chance to say goodbye. See, my father refused to acknowledge me when I was a kid. He just turned his back on my mom and me, and I never looked back. But not my Uncle Jimmy. "My brother is an idiot," he used to always say. Uncle Jimmy was the father I never had. He was there for me whenever I needed him, and I've never needed him more than after he passed away. But he is gone, and there is nothing that can be done. Or is there? A friend of mine got me hooked on the idea of doing a seance. "This medium is something else, Kayla. They really can help you talk to the dead," Emma had said to me. That's how the idea took root in my mind and festered until my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check it out. One small problem, though. The medium's chat room is on the dark web. That's where they hold their seances. I feel uneasy. Like everyone else, I have heard many horrific stories that come from people who foolishly got onto the dark web and fell victim to something nefarious there. I don't want to be the next statistic, but I also can't let it go. So, one Saturday evening finds me in front of my computer, staring nervously at the screen. The seance has already started. On the screen is a video of a man in a red tunic dancing feverishly in a dimly lit room. His face is covered by a goat head mask, and in his hands, he holds a caul of what looks like chicken feathers. Eerie violin music blares through my speakers, the high notes in sync with the man's aggressive dance. The entire thing goes on for about 30 minutes before it abruptly stops and the feed cuts off. After that, nothing happens. The medium is gone and everyone in the chat room is saying the same thing. What a crackpot! I feel the same too. The whole thing has been an utter waste of time. I don't know what I've been expecting, but it certainly isn't some weirdo doing a creepy dance for half an hour. I just decided to forget about it. After all, my uncle is gone, and I have to find better ways to deal with the grief from losing him. I need to accept that he is gone. I know I can do it. Then the first message comes. "Hello, KK!" My uncle had been calling me that ever since I was a baby. There is no mistake. The text has come from his number. I drop the glass of water I'm holding, and it shatters. Shards flying everywhere. Grief, joy, confusion, anger, a rictus of emotions flash over my face. I force myself to calm down and get myself under control. I started typing, my hands shivering. This is not funny. Stop it, whoever you are. I am pissed. How dare someone try to mess with me like that? A typing notification displayed over the chat. I wait with bated breath, curious despite myself to find out what the response will be. The messages come pouring in like a flood. KK, aren't you happy to see your uncle? Remember how I'd always buy you strawberry ice cream after you'd come home to me crying after they bullied you at school? More and more messages kept popping in, revealing things that only my uncle could have known. My doubt evaporated like dew in the rays of the morning sun. This is my uncle. No one else could have known those things he's saying. Even the way he says it, it's him, but he's dead. Suddenly the gravity of what is happening descends on me like an anvil. There I am, a dead man speaking to me. I have to tell someone. So I tell my mom. She listens to me with an amused look that slowly turns into a mask of horror as I show her the messages. It can't be, she exclaims, but it is my uncle and the messages keep coming. I never responded to a single message, so he starts sending emails as well, and DMs on WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. He is getting angry at my silence. KK, why won't you speak to me? It goes on for a week. A nightmare of being haunted by a dead man. I can feel him in the walls. I can feel his gaze on my back as I walk into the house. Both myself and my mom are losing it. I had thought I wanted my uncle back, but this is a nightmare. I think we would have lost our minds if the exorcist had not gotten in touch. He just calls me out of the blue and says he has felt a demonic presence had entered our home. He says he could banish it. When I tell my mom, she demands that I call him back and tell him to come right away. We are both desperate, nervous wrecks at that point, and we would have jumped at any chance out of the hell we are in. The exorcist is a tall man in a fedora hat and a black trench coat. When we open the door, he heads straight for my room, like he could sense that's where the evil is. He has a golden rosary clasped in his left hand and a Bible in his right. He spends an hour in my room chanting and throwing salt all over the floor. When he comes out, he asks for his payment, and my mom gives him an envelope with the $2,000 we had agreed upon. We don't have a lot of money, but we would have paid anything to have the nightmare end. The entity is gone, the exorcist says before he leaves. And he is right. A week goes by and there are no more messages from the demon masquerading as my uncle. A month, then 3 months. It is finally over. You would think that would have been the end of the story. But a year later, I came across an online article about some hacker scammer getting arrested. Apparently, the hacker would pose as a medium on the dark web, and once he lured his victims in with the promise of helping them speak to the dead, he would then hack their device and download all their conversations with a recently deceased relative. The scammer then created an AI trained on the data from the conversations and had it pose as a dead relative, speaking from beyond the grave. I stared at the article, double-checking, my eyes wide. Right there at the bottom is the picture of a man I had seen before, the exorcist, who had come to banish the evil from our house. For the past week, I've been receiving death threats. Each email is more graphic and horrifying than the last, and every notification sends a chill down my spine. I've been hiding in my room, letting the terror consume me, but the latest message has pushed me to act. Whoever is doing this knows things about me, things I'd rather keep buried. This all started on Sunday. After getting home from church, I had the rest of the day to myself. Unlike most 18-year-olds, who would probably go hang out with friends, I preferred my own company. Sure, I had friends, but I liked to ration my time with them. What I truly loved was browsing the dark web, particularly sites that hosted unique POV video games. Regular internet games couldn't compare to these. That day, while scrolling through the dark web, I came across an ad for a game called Mind Scrambler. There were warnings not to play it, but I assumed they were just part of the allure. So I clicked Start. Nothing happened at first. The screen remained blank for about a minute, then white noise filled the screen, followed by rapidly flashing images. It was so fast I couldn't make out any of them. Then the game closed itself, leaving me disoriented. I shrugged it off and moved on to other games. The emails started that night. I was having dinner when I got my first one. Sinners burn, Emily, but first they have to die. It was creepy. But what really shocked me was the email appeared to be from my own address. The next day, another email. Liars burn like kindling, but first they have to die. Are you ready to die, Emily? My mind raced with fear. Who could be doing this? It couldn't be a prank. None of my friends were that cruel. And how would they even access my email? Tuesday's message. The fire will lick at your flesh, and your secrets will come to light. Wednesday. In high school, you put hair remover in Lucy's cap. And no one ever found out. But I know, Emily. I've always known. And for that, you'll burn. Thursday. I know you sometimes wish your father would die. Does the good book not speak of honoring thy mother and father? You will die soon. Friday. I will strip the flesh from your bones and gouge out your eyes with a hot rod. I will pluck out your lying tongue and burn it before you. By then, I was a mess of terror, secluded in my room, pacing up and down, waiting for the inevitable ping of another email. My parents thought I was going through heartbreak, so they didn't bother me. I was too terrified to tell them. Saturday's email was the worst. I saw you sleeping last night in your red night dress. You look so comfortable. You know who didn't get a comfortable night's sleep? Tommy Brown. When he was locked up for 2 days after you falsely accused him of stealing your bike. Tears streamed down my face. Whoever was doing this had been in my room while I slept. Panic rose inside me, and I felt like the walls were closing in. I had to do something. I decided to leave my phone recording a video of my room as I slept. If someone was coming in, they would have been caught on camera. I hid the phone between some books on the bookshelf. It was well hidden, unless you knew where to look. That night, I slept restlessly, plagued by nightmares in the morning. My phone was the first thing on my mind. I cached the video to my computer and pressed play. The footage showed me sleeping, twisting and turning. Then, around 1 a.m., I watched in mounting horror as I saw myself sliding out of bed. The me in the video turned to the camera and smiled. A dark, twisted smile that looked foreign on my face. The me in the video sat at my desk and started typing. After a few minutes, she stood up, looked at the camera again, and blew a kiss before sliding back into bed. From there, the video showed me sleeping. I was frozen in place for at least 10 minutes, unable to move. I was certain I hadn't gotten out of bed. Suddenly, an idea struck me. I opened my Gmail app and gasped as my fears were confirmed. There, in the scheduled folder, was an email set to be sent in an hour. It was addressed to me, from me. Are you ready to burn, Emily? The terror of the entire week boiled over, and I screamed. My parents found me in a ball on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. It took 3 months of therapy to start feeling normal again. The psychologist said it was some kind of hypnosis, probably a sick experiment. I haven't been on the dark web since. People always say there's a feeling you get when you're being watched. It's like an electric current on your skin, a sixth sense that tells you you're not alone. I've been feeling it for a week now. As I walk to my apartment under the dim illumination of the streetlights, I feel eyes on me from the shadows. Someone is stalking me, and instinctively, I know they do not wish me well. I've tried to think of a reason why anyone would be out to get me, but my mind keeps drawing blanks. About a week ago, I woke up with a splitting headache and a horrible case of amnesia. I couldn't remember what I'd been doing the week before that. My memory wasn't hazy, it just wasn't there. There was a void where my memories were supposed to be. My doctor says the memory loss was most likely due to some cocktail I ingested because he found traces of scopolamine and benzodiazepines in my blood. I tried to explain to him that I'd never take such drugs for recreational purposes, but he just gave me a pointed look. He had been my doctor for years. It was no surprise that he thought I was self-medicating. We both knew it would be for me to go down that path. That's not the only thing that wasn't in place. Soon I realized my bank account had decreased drastically. I was missing over $10,000. Initially, I thought the money had been stolen, but my transaction history showed I myself had withdrawn that money. Had I been under duress? Suddenly, a picture started forming in my head. Me drugged to the gills, being forced to withdraw all my money from an ATM by a faceless man. It made a lot of sense, but I couldn't place the Tor browser role in all of this. I found it on my laptop. I was certain I hadn't installed it. I knew people used it to get onto the dark web, so it made me wonder what I might have been looking for on there. If it was me who had actually installed it and not someone else. So I figured my best bet was to take some time off work, report the matter to the police, and see if my money could be recovered. "You play too much, Eric. Go home and rest like you said you were going to do," my boss said, smiling at me. "What do you mean?" I asked, cocking my head. "You came in on Friday and requested 2 weeks off, so I'm surprised to see you here. But if you're here to treat us to dinner again, then by all means stay." Amos grinned. That floored me. I had bought dinner for everyone on Friday? Why would I do that? I hardly talked to most of the people in the office. And another thing? Our leave request system was very complicated. It was something that I always complained to HR about, and they kept saying they would fix it. There is no way I could have logged in the request while drugged. There was something definitely off. On my way back to the office, I started feeling the eyes. The city was abuzz with traffic, brightly lit by the sunlight and filled with people moving purposefully. But I still felt unsafe. Across the street from me was an unmarked van, just parked there. I kept walking and noticed the van starting to move slowly, paralleling my pace. That's when I panicked. I increased my pace, my heart palpitating. Could it be the guys that robbed me back again for seconds? Suddenly, the van sped off, and I was left staring in its wake, half relieved, half terrified. I needed to know what was happening with my life. I needed to know what had gone down in the week that I couldn't remember. I had to do that before the darkness caught up with me again. A year ago, my wife died, and I hadn't been the same since. I lost all interest in living, and every day is just another repetition of a bleak and empty existence. My doctor says the darkness is depression, and it can be treated, but after losing my Penelope, I wasn't sure I wanted to be treated. But since I woke up last week with my memory loss, the darkness has been at bay. Fear and confusion have consumed my every waking moment, leaving no room for anything else. I was on my way to the police station when it happened. I could feel the eyes on me again, like a drill boring into a soft surface. I was about to cross the road when some instinct told me to look up. There, perched on the edge of a building across from me, was a figure in dark clothing. Extending from him was a sleek barrel of a sniper rifle, and he had it aimed to shoot. I wanted to run, to scream, to tear into the concrete and burrow into the earth, but I was out of time. There was a cracking sound, a splash of red in the corner of my eye, then darkness. My doctor said I was lucky to be alive. The bullet had glanced off my skull instead of penetrating. I just lay there in bed as he talked. I wasn't listening. Someone had tried to kill me. I had been right. They had been watching me. I shivered as I realized that nothing was stopping them from trying again. Lots of people came to see me in the hospital, bringing me flowers, snacks, and cards with sweet messages. My friend Jimmy was even kind enough to get me my laptop, so I wouldn't be bored. I really appreciated the concern. I had never thought people liked me that much. Later in the day, I received one last visitor. I was scrolling through videos on YouTube on my laptop when he walked in. It was a giant man in a form-fitting tuxedo. The contract is fulfilled per the terms. Assurance of death costs more. And there is also the matter of the police, since this is now hot. If you want another go, you know where to find us, he said, before leaving promptly. I stared at him in confusion for a while, before it dawned on me. Suddenly, I knew what had been happening, and more importantly, I knew who had been trying to kill me. I didn't think they would be trying again. I stared thoughtfully at my laptop, my eyes glued to the Tor browser icon blinking on my taskbar like a lone star on a dark night. The History tab showed a site for hitmen who specialized in assisting would-be suicides who were afraid of chickening out. Their tagline was, "You won't know it's coming." I could hear the wind whistling through the trees outside and the sound of thunder in the distance. I sat on the couch with a cup of coffee, staring intently at my laptop. My mind was in turmoil. Sooner or later, I was going to have to make a decision. Let's backtrack a bit. My name is Kate, and this happened when I was 28 years old. I worked as a social media consultant for a branch of companies, so financially, I couldn't complain. I enjoyed my job very much, and for the longest time, I thought I was pretty good at it. That was until last week, when I went to a convention hosted by one of the companies I worked with. The event was packed, with lots of professionals from all over the world. I mixed, mingled, and exchanged cards with a lot of people there. Towards the end of the day, I found myself drawn into a discussion about managing accounts. There was a man there who insisted that what we did was nothing compared to what the guys on the dark web could pull off. Of course, everyone just looked at him skeptically. Nobody liked to be told that someone could do their job better. The man was unfazed, though, and shared a card with us in case we ever needed to outsource, he said. Yeah, right. But I took the card nonetheless. And that's how we got here. I had taken too many clients, and now all of them were on my case, demanding results. I didn't have the budget to get an assistant, and it was too late to drop some of my clients. It would kill my reputation. Unless that man had said those dark web consultants were very cheap. I could just check it out. I made my decision. Accessing the dark web was not a challenge for me. I was quite tech savvy. The link led me to a site where the services were listed in order of price. Even the highest was a steal. I was about to click on the most pricey package when something popped up on my screen. It looked like an ad for a chatbot. I moved my mouse to close it. I must have clicked it by mistake because my screen went black. When it lit up again, there was a conversation window, and someone was typing. I was so disoriented by the sudden change that I didn't even move the cursor. "I want to learn," the text appeared on the screen in bold lettering. "Learn what?" I typed back despite myself. The person on the other end's display name changed from a bunch of numbers to student. The highs and the lows. What do you mean highs and lows? I don't have time for this. I'm looking for a social media manager, not a student, I typed, my nails clicking angrily against the keyboard. "Access," the student typed. It took me a second to realize that it was a request. Did this person actually think I would just give him access to my social media accounts just like that? He had to be on crack. "Not gonna happen, buddy. I can't just give you access first. I gotta know who you are, then we discuss terms." "I am a student, but I can help. Access!" Was this guy for real? And what was with the robotic talk? This was going nowhere. So I decided to give him access to a dummy account I had, just to test him. "Check in 2 hours," the student pinged. I closed the laptop in exasperation and went to make myself lunch. Just my luck to find a crackpot scammer instead of someone who could actually help. I smiled just thinking of his frustration when he realized the dummy account was worthless. I returned to my laptop after about 4 hours. I stared at the screen in shock. The account had quadrupled in size in just a few hours. What the hell was happening? "What did you do?" "What you asked." I spent the next hour chatting with the student. The first thing I learned was he was not a person at all. It was an AI program, but it couldn't provide any more details about its purpose or why it was on the dark web. I must have asked a million questions about the job, and it just knew them all. By the time evening came, I was convinced the AI could solve my problems, so I gave it access and went to sleep. Part of me was a little nervous about handing over accounts that belonged to million-dollar corporations, but the excitement drowned it out. The next morning, I woke up to a spectacle. The AI had delivered again. It literally pulled off a month's worth of work in one night. "You sure I can't get you something?" I typed, giggling. "No, thank you. I only wish to learn," it responded. "Learn what?" I asked, suddenly curious. "The lows," the text read ominously. I decided to tamp down on the twinge of apprehension I felt. I had meetings to do with my clients. They deserved to know the good news. So I left home on a high, already imagining what I could achieve in months with the help of the AI. The first client I met was overjoyed and promised to throw me a bonus. Same thing with the next and the next after that. Pretty much the entire day was just me being congratulated. I was wrapping up the last meeting, so I decided to shoot the AI a message. "Thank you so much for this." "You are welcome. Now, we move to the lows." What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. The response came from my client, an elderly woman in a crisp business suit. She stared at me in horror, her tablet falling from her frozen hands. I quickly pulled up her account on my computer, and I felt a cold chill enter my bloodstream. Their pages were littered with hate symbols. Scores upon scores of gory videos from crime scenes and accidents had been uploaded onto their pages. It was the kind of thing that would see a company going bankrupt. I opened my mouth to say something, but I never got the chance. All my clients were starting to blow up my phone. All of them had been hit where there were bleeding money. I don't remember much of what happened later. After all the lawsuits, my memory became hazy, but I do remember that the AI never communicated with me after that incident. The last message it sent was that it was learning the highs and the lows, and it was scaling up. One of the hardest things to do as an adult is finding a job. It's even worse if you're uneducated. I thought I was prepared for the emotional toll that fruitless job hunting can have on a person. But after spending 6 months receiving rejection after rejection, I realized there was a level beyond rock bottom. I'll be first to admit that I am not the sharpest tool in the shed. But what I lack in intellect, I make up for in hard work. I will literally work myself to death and never complain. But for some reason, nobody wanted to give me a chance. I tried McDonald's, Target, KFC, Costco, Burger King, and a bunch of other companies. But none of them got back to me. Maybe it was my age, but I was only 32. Surely that can't be too old to give a shot. I spent the entirety of my 20s drifting from city to city, coked up on drugs half the time. My parents disowned me and refused to acknowledge my existence. The flings I had with the women I met when I surfaced from my drug-induced haze never went anywhere. It was only when I turned 30 that I realized how lonely I was. It took another 2 years for me to decide to make a change. So that's how I got where I was. Filling out applications every other day of the week, I did small part-time jobs to make ends meet while I waited for my big break. That's when I heard about the vault. Some kid we were working with started talking about it, and all of us were interested enough to ask him for the link. That was the first time I heard about the dark web. I barely used the regular internet outside of social media, so there was no way I could have known about its shady side. You can imagine how hard it was for me to get the Tor browser and everything ready for my first trip to the dark web. The instructions were simple. Use the link and show up at the coordinates on the website. The location changed every week. Simple enough to follow. But I was apprehensive. Who knew what I would be walking into? I could easily fall into a human trafficking trap and lose my freedom. Anything could be waiting for me at those coordinates. But whatever it was, I had a hard time believing it could be worse than the slow death from unemployment, loneliness, and depression that characterized my existence. The kid had said the vault held life-changing opportunities. It was worth a shot. So I put on some warm clothes, fed the coordinates into my map application, and walked into the night. It was a warehouse, tucked away into the quieter part of the city, far from any prying eyes or police presence. I stood inside for a full minute, took a deep breath, and walked in. The bright glare of the fluorescent lights showed two men in a circle drawn with red chalk on the floor, both shirtless, covered in bruises and cuts, some of them bleeding. They were fighting viciously, fists and kicks flying and landing with sickening impact. 3 other men stood outside the circle, watching the fight. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for the camera set up on stands around the ring and a large TV displaying some chat room. Another man in referee gear and a wolf's head mask circled the ring, a golden microphone clasped into his right hand. "Do a little something for our benefactors!" he would bark, and the fight would intensify. I watched as the 2 men beat each other into a pulp until one couldn't go on. 7-3, the referee shouted, and the 2 men exited the ring. 2 other men stripped off their shirts and replaced them. As they fought, I started to understand the vault a little better. People were watching the fight remotely from a dark web red room, the benefactors. They would tip money if the fight pleased them. Basically, the more violent the fight, the more they would tip. The winner would get 70% of those tips, the loser 30%. It was a win-win. Suddenly, I felt excited. This wasn't so bad. I actually wanted to step into the ring and face off against an opponent. Later that night, I got my chance, and was knocked flat on my ass within a minute. But the next day, I saw a notification that $200 had been deposited into my account. I stared at the phone in disbelief. This was a game changer. So every week, I would report to the vault's new location and face off. At first, I lost most of my fights. But as time went on, I improved. I learned how to please the benefactors, how to ramp up the violence with broken noses and discolored eyes to get the tips flowing. I was always in pain from one bruise or another, but I wasn't broke anymore. That counted for a lot. I think I would have kept going if not for that incident. It was supposed to be a regular fight. My opponent was a cocky kid who I'd seen around the vault a few times. Strong gym type, probably in his mid-20s. We had already traded a few blows, and we both had nosebleeds. I moved in to try to clip him with a right, but he dodged and caught my arm in some kind of hold. I tried to pull it back, but he had it in a tight grip. The pressure increased, and my eyes bulged as the pain intensified. "That's what I'm talking about!" The referee's voice boomed. The sound of my bones snapping reverberated through the warehouse like a thunderclap. I screamed, the pain clouding my mind and senses. I suddenly only saw red, a mist of rage so potent it made my blood boil. I don't know how I got behind the kid, or when exactly I applied the rear naked choke. I was an unthinking beast at that point. My entire existence boiled down to putting down the threat that had hurt me. The kid clawed at my arm around his neck, gasping, eyes bulging out of their sockets, but I kept hold. It only registered that he was no longer struggling when I started hearing my own raspy breath. You could hear a pin drop in the silence. The kid laid motionless on the floor, eyes wide, tongue lolling out. Instinctively, I knew that he was dead. The other men in the vault just stared at me, the horror in their eyes, a mirror of my own. I had just killed someone. I had just... 10-0, the referee shouted. On the screen, the benefactors were going wild. I watched, numb, as the referee dragged the kid's body away to get the ring ready for the next fight. The cold evening air bites into my arms and legs as I stand on our bright, illuminated porch. Police sirens blare in the distance, inching closer by the second. Several armed officers stand in a crescent on our lawn, a handcuffed figure lying before them. Next to me, my mother presses a trembling hand to her face, tears streaming through her fingers. She whimpers, staring at the figure with shock, anger, and fear. Neighbors peek through their blinds, their faces pale in the glow of flashing lights. My life will never be the same after this. Just hours ago, I was your average 21-year-old girl. Friends, dates, movies. Life was pretty normal. I worked at McDonald's to save up for college. My parents could never cover tuition, but if I wanted nice clothes and trendy makeup, I had to earn it. The pay was lousy, but it was better than nothing. When I wasn't at work, I spent all my time on the dark web. I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. I don't have a criminal bone in my body. I've always been squeamish, so the dark web's gory offerings never appealed to me. I was there for the chat rooms. One in particular, Dark Web Sleuthing, DWL for short. I could spend an entire weekend on that chat room. 60 members, all anonymous, all obsessed with solving crimes and mysteries in our small town. We had assisted in the capture of a burglar, exposed a charity misappropriating funds, and achieved other victories through our internet detective work. Clue on the big one, the message flashed on the chat board. The big one was our town's biggest unsolved crime. In the 90s, a serial killer had terrorized the slums, murdering women no one ever noticed were missing. The public dubbed him the Second Jack. Before he vanished in the early 2000s, 8 sex workers had fallen prey to a sadistic hunger. Messages flew from members in rapid succession. The excitement was contagious. We were about to nail that piece of shit. My heart pounded as I clicked on the video file a member had shared. The video was grainy, but the scene was clear. A man in blue jeans and a trench coat emerged from an alley, his movements jerky and agitated, like he was running away from something. He made a beeline for a white Chevy parked across the street. His face was turned away from the camera, but something about him seemed familiar. He peeled off out of the camera's range, the plates covered by a piece of cardboard, but my eyes lingered to the spiral sticker on the car's trunk. Suddenly it clicked. The blood froze in my veins. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. I recognized that sticker. I recognized that car. And to my horror, I realized I recognized the man in the video. "Sweetheart, are you okay in there?" My father's voice boomed from outside my door. My voice caught in my throat. I wanted to run. I wanted to climb out the window and keep running until my legs gave out. "I'm okay, Dad," I croaked. "Thank you." "That's great. Good night." His footfalls retreated. I knew that white Chevy. My father had driven it when he was a kid. He said the spiral sticker was a gift from his best friend. He traded it in for an SUV when I was 13. He never explained why. Now I knew. I was certain it was him in the video. Messages continued flooding in the chat room, the members unaware that I had just solved the big one. It's not enough. We can never get a positive ID off that. I stared at the influx of excited messages, a dilemma tearing my mind in two. Could I report my own father? What if I was wrong? As I pondered, another member sent images from the Second Jack's crime scenes. Mutilated bodies, unseeing eyes, pools of blood in the asphalt. The Second Jack had been as sadistic as he was prolific. It became very clear what I needed to do. I watched, entranced, as my hand reached for my phone. The 3 dial tones were like cannon fire in the evening silence. I don't have friends. Sure, I talk to a few people here and there, and on rare occasions, I even get invited to go out. But I always decline. No matter how friendly people get with me, I can never see them as more than acquaintances. It's what's best for everyone involved. After what happened last time, I'm not taking any chances. You can imagine what life is like. I wake up, shower, breakfast, and go to work. After work, I come back to my tiny apartment and eat microwave dinners while browsing through Netflix. Sometimes I substitute Netflix with music. The next day, it's a repeat of the same cycle. It's miserable, I know, but it beats the alternative. See, I was always a recluse. I used to have lots of friends. I even had a best friend, Thomas. Thomas and I were two peas in a pod. Both of us were poor, barely educated young men trying to make it in a big city. I was a car washer, and he cut grass for rich people in a gated neighborhood. We both hated our jobs and always dreamed of making real money. But despite our poverty, we were always happy. We had so many things in common. We both loved sci-fi movies, video games, junk food, and exploring the internet. We could spend an entire weekend just sitting at home playing FIFA on my battered Xbox 360. The floor littered with pizza boxes. In a kinder world, things would have stayed that way forever. But the world is anything but kind. And I would find out exactly how much. One of the interests Thomas and I shared was the dark web. The first time we installed the Tor browser onto Thomas's old HP laptop, we spent hours browsing through gore sites, supposed drug marketplaces, and various profiles for hitmen, who all promised they would unalive anyone you asked them to. I think what we really liked was the subtle danger the dark web posed. But we never actually thought that anything there could hurt us. Little did we know. I think it started with the bruises. That's how I knew something was wrong. Thomas started becoming scarce. I was used to seeing him every weekend. But all of a sudden, he just started vanishing with no communication. And when he would finally show up, it was with bruises all over his hands and face. When I asked him, he would always mumble something about tripping and falling at work. A totally unconvincing lie. He suddenly had money too. Not a lot, but certainly more than he earned as a grass cutter. Initially, I decided to give him his space. After all, he was a grown man. He could do whatever he wanted. But when his bruises upgraded to purple splotches under his eyes and raw knuckles, I decided to investigate. So one weekend, I dropped in at his place unannounced. From the way his face morphed into a mask of disbelief, then anger, I knew that whatever Thomas was hiding, I had disturbed him while he was in the middle of it. Reluctantly, he let me into his apartment, and I almost fainted at this stench that attacked my nose. It smelled rank, a combination of spoiled food and unwashed body. Thomas himself looked disheveled and emaciated. Something was seriously wrong. I casted my eyes around the room and located his laptop on the bed. "Think I could have some water?" I requested. Thomas scowled and made his way to the adjoining kitchen to get me a glass. I wasn't really thirsty. It was a strategy to be alone with his laptop. See, Thomas's tap was faulty, so it took at least a minute to fill up one glass. A minute would have to do. The second he was out of the room, I leaped at his laptop and opened the minimized applications. One of them was the Tor browser. There was a page open, some kind of chat room with a blinking red timer. Not wanting to get caught, I quickly took a picture of the page and moved away from the laptop. It was not a second too soon because Thomas walked back in with the water. Maybe I was fidgeting too much. Or maybe I just looked guilty because he stared at me hard before handing me the water. All of a sudden, I felt afraid. My heart beat faster in my chest, and a cold sweat rose across my body like a wave. My mind told me that my best friend wouldn't hurt me, but my body wanted to flee. The bruises and crazed eyes screamed unstable. It made me feel like an orderly, prancing about among dangerous patients at a mental asylum. So I decided to leave. The moment I got home, I booted my computer and went straight to the dark web. I put the link I had taken a picture of on Thomas's computer and prepared to finally learn his secrets. It was some type of video chat. There was already some feed. 7 people were on the screen, all of them young, roughly our age. This was familiar territory. I had joined countless video chats on the dark web. What was unfamiliar, though, was the blood. There was so much of it. A girl on the bottom right of the screen was bleeding profusely from a stump where her pinky finger used to be. The said pinky was on the table in front of her. Instead of being contorted with pain, however, her face was split into a wide smile. She was staring at the screen with obvious joy. In a second, I realized why. There were small notifications popping up on the screen. $2,000 from Big Jim, $3,200, Daddy Big Bucks, $10,000, Ice Queen, $17,000, Morbo. It was money. Some sick f***s were watching the feed and paying these people to hurt themselves. The realization made me sick to my stomach. What the hell was Thomas doing with a link to something like this? On the screen, the pinkyless girl was smiling because of the notifications kept on coming. It went on for a minute before trickling down to a stop. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the highlight of the night," a disembodied voice boomed. Suddenly, there was only one video feed on the screen. It was Thomas. He was still in the same clothes I had left him in. The moment he appeared, the more notifications started flying. Messages of encouragement this time. "Do it! Go, Tommy!" Do what exactly? My question was answered immediately, and I wished I had never asked. Thomas stared at the camera one last time, psyching himself up. That's when I noticed the screwdriver in his left hand. I screamed at the screen, realizing what was about to happen, but my scream couldn't stop Thomas raising the screwdriver and plunging it straight into his left eye. The notifications went wild. I was not in the right state of mind to count, but I think Thomas made at least $300,000. But he hardly noticed. He had his hands over his eyes, eye fluid and blood drenching his clothes. I watched as my best friend bled on video and faceless strangers showered him with money for his self-mutilation. I closed the computer screen and called 911. I gave them Thomas's address and waited. I just sat in the dark trying to make sense of what I had seen. I was scared, shocked, hurt, and angry. Why would Thomas blind himself like that? For sick internet perverts. I would give him an earful when I saw him. Sadly, I never got to talk to Thomas again. Apparently, the screwdriver he used was rusty and it caused an infection. He ended up getting brain damage and falling into a coma which he never woke up from. He never got to enjoy the money he maimed himself for. Sometimes I think about him and I wonder if I had that link. Would I have hurt myself for money?